Hello, my name is John O'Connell, Chair and Founder of ScaleUp Group, and I'm delighted today, as one of our Pearls of Wisdom podcasts, to be talking with James Bennet MBE, who, amongst many other things, is a fellow partner in ScaleUp Group. We obtain growth funding for tech entrepreneurs as well as co-investing ourselves. So far, we have secured around $100 million and personally have invested $7 million in our clients. James, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you for inviting me and look forward to the discussion.
Indeed. I'm delighted that our clients at ScaleUp Group have the benefit of your vast experience, knowledge, and connections, which they are able to take advantage of as and when they feel the need. We'll hear much more about this shortly. An entrepreneur right from the start, you created Orbis Records, which became one of the largest record importers at the time. James, is it time for a comeback, perhaps, with the current trend for vinyl? Then your MBA, self-funded, presumably, followed by being a marketing director, including for Price Waterhouse as it was then. You then set up and in due course sold the European Technology Forum, ETF, where we first met about 20 years ago, before you joined EY soon after, retiring as a partner from EY at the end of last year. I must say at the time, James, I was surprised that you made the move from ETF to EY. I thought, wow, it's quite a switch. And frankly, at the time, I thought I won't last very long. So you proved me wrong yet again. Whilst you were still at ETF, you became de facto one of the founders of the newly formed Technology Leadership Group, TLG, for what was then the Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust, where yours truly was the founding chair. The TLG has gone on to raise, is it £75 million today? I know you're
About
still...
that. We don't have exact accounting standards, John, so yes, we've done that.
Very good. And of course, it's spawned other leadership groups, other industries, which altogether, I think, will raise at least double that, I believe.
Yeah.
All to help disadvantaged young people, especially amongst many other deserving causes. So tremendous organisation, and for which you were awarded, quite rightly, your MBE. Wow. James, I know there are a few items you'd like to cover, so the floor is yours. You're telling me you want to talk about working with large organisations, which, of course, most of our SME clients are committing what we all collectively agree is madness, trying to sell to large enterprises, influence, not control, and how to drive success. And, very nuanced comments I'm sure you're going to make, which will be of great, great help to our audience today. James, the floor is well and truly yours.
Well, thank you, John. And I've been reflecting on this discussion and thinking about, well, what could be useful to individuals that are listening to this and people that we connect with through the ScaleUp Group. But your wry humor when I joined EY, well, that's not going to last. That wasn't just people external to EY. There's quite a few people in EY that didn't think that would last. And I think that part of that is actually, how does an entrepreneur move from running their own business to being in an organization? And it's not easy. There were certainly moments when I thought, is this the right move? I mean, the reason I stayed there so long is I really enjoyed working there. I worked with some amazing people, but I also worked with some incredible clients, and I felt I was certainly inside the room on a whole range of different corporate activities. And also the breadth of what an EY does means that no day is similar. So really, 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 I look back very fondly at the 20 years that I spent at EY, but I think there's some really quite interesting lessons. And I suppose if I think about people that may be listening to this podcast, a lot of people that I met at EY that were looking to engage with the firm were very focused on, we want to have a partnership with EY. And it was very obvious why that would be interesting. The logic, well, EY's got lots of clients. They could introduce their clients to me, to my technology. Um, and but actually, my advice pretty much to anyone who'd ask that question, and this is no slight on EY, it would be really true of any major organization, is actually partnering with large organizations is really hard. You can
Yeah.
spend an enormous amount of time trying to activate a partnership. And that I suppose the few lessons that I've learned is one, if you want to partner with an organization, really understand and ask that organization and others why they would want to partner with you. You
Mm.
can absolutely see what's in it for you, but what's in it for them. The
Yeah.
second thing would be, does it actually accelerate your business? And actually, it is far more powerful for a young organization or even a more mature organization to actually win its own customers. And where I've
Yes.
seen those partnerships work really well is where the client has actually said, yeah, we'd like someone working with you. And it might be an Accenture, it might be an EY, it might be a PwC, or whoever.
Yeah.
And that pulls in the partner because they want to do what the customer wants to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's a much more powerful way. And when you can go into a partner with a customer, they're much more likely to listen.
Yeah.
The next challenge is it's actually really hard to work out how large organizations make money. It's very simple at a high level, but actually the person you're talking to is probably in a business unit. And you need to really understand how that business unit operates, how that makes money, and how the partnership is going to lead to revenue for the partner as well as obviously your own organization. And I
Mm.
think a lot of the time organizations don't really understand that. They think, oh, well, a large consulting firm is going to make 10 times the cost of our service in consulting fees. But that's not always true. And the complexity of that process is far more pronounced than people might imagine.
Yes. Yeah. I get that, and I think understanding the motivations of both sides is, when you say it, of course, James, it seems so obvious, but I remember, I got very starry-eyed in my early years when we were picked by a very large consulting organization, I won't say which one, to be in their technology showroom in Chicago. And we thought this is the beginning of big time for us. What I didn't appreciate was that they just wanted to show off how much they were in touch with the latest technology,
Mm,
but really had not much intention of actually doing any business with us at all. And I guess that's because I personally didn't make enough effort to understand the motivations of those who are making such decisions on the
yeah,
other side, so to speak.
yeah.
Any particular examples which come to mind, which good and not so good, that you're thinking of when you make these comments?
Um, that's a great question, John. So I think I suppose some examples that come to mind is often when I was meeting organizations, they were talking about why their solution was great, why they were better than their competitors. Um, they might talk about their roadmap. What they didn't do as much is talk about, well, what problem are you solving for the client? What
Yeah,
is their point pain?
yeah,
And why do they care? And the reality is a senior exec will have many points of pain
yes,
and will be interested in solving those points of pain, but there will be a priority order. And if a
mm,
technology or a solution or a service can solve that problem, it needs to be high up on their priority list for it really to get their attention. And I
yeah,
think a lot of time, and I saw this just as much in EY, in other large organizations, that people would develop what they thought was a really interesting proposition. and they think there must be market. I mean, we know that, the cost of compliance is really high. We know that organizations are looking to grow their top line, and this thing, solution, service is going to really make a difference to those organizations. But what often happened is that there really wasn't, and this is a discussion that we regularly have with the scale up partners, is what's the product market fit? How are you
Yeah.
going to take this to market? How are you actually going to land your customer? And I think the criticality of actually having a customer and iterating with a customer, a paying customer, is really important. And I think it's easy to say, but often, sitting in a theoretical presentation being pitched to by an organization, you're sort of thinking, okay, well, that's interesting and that's cool technology and that's, I understand that, but what problem does that actually solve? And is that a problem that a customer wants to pay for?
Yeah. Certainly, the reason I had a 20-year overnight success was the first 10 years. Our software product was a solution looking for a problem.
Right.
And
Yes.
of course, our arrogance somewhat blinded us to to what you've just said, which is why people are so stupid is not to realize they've got this big problem and we can solve it for them. It again sounds phenomenally naive, doesn't it? But it's a constant reminder. And the point you make about paying customer, of course, with many funds, you need to have more than just the one early adopter.
Yeah.
And we all know that early adopters can be a bit quirky,
Yeah.
may not be representative. So there has to be reasonable evidence of multiple adherence before you get funds' attention. Yeah, very good points.
I suppose some other things that may be useful is I've never in my career had much power. I've either been the entrepreneur in a small organization, selling to a large organization, or I've been, a partner in EY and looking after my clients. But part of my success is really trying to influence people and not in a way that is I mean, influence has got some negative connotations or could have, but it's actually trying to think about, well, how do I get what I'm trying to do on someone's agenda? And my start point in what how I do that is to really put myself in the other person's shoes. So I'll give you some examples. I'm trying to get a Brazilian partner in EY to take an interest and talk to my client. This Brazilian partner has lots and lots of amazing local companies that he engages with, or she. They may also have some international clients. They may be pretty busy with lots of things. So, how do I make this interesting to them? So, I will be thinking about, well, what would drive this person's agenda? So, it might be that he or she would be interested in some of the connections they could make. It could be that it would, I mean, clearly one would hope that they would be successful in engaging my client. But that process, it takes a long time and it requires people to make an effort. And I
Mm.
saw a lot of times people trying to use brute force and they would send you an email or call you and tell you that you are going to talk to my client and you are going to focus on my client and you're going to do that because I'm telling you to do it.
Hmm.
And it was fascinating how unsuccessful that was as a strategy. People
Mm.
might nod vigorously, but you could almost guarantee that no action would happen.
Mm.
And I think the same is true of any sort of relationship. You've got to start with what is an individual's motivation? What could be valuable to them? What is, if in terms of how you're building your initial engagement with them, where do you have something in common? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, in my experience, is that quite often individuals are incredibly focused on the outcome that they're looking for, and not looking at the outcome for whoever they're engaging with. And if you use the client situation, you're talking to a client about a solution or service you provide. What are the measures of success for the client you're talking to? What would make that client successful? What are some of their goals and aspirations? They will have a boss, they will have a scorecard or a list of metrics. How is what you're doing going to help them with that? And then how do you give that person comfort that you will make sure that that happens? And then absolutely make sure you then deliver on that. A lot of times I saw in my career someone make a sale and then they disappeared. And
Yeah.
actually, clients remember that. And if you land some work with a client, you do what you say you're going to do, you make them successful in their organization,
Mm.
something almost certainly will go wrong because it always does. So, how
Yeah.
you then react to that and how you stick with the client and loyalty, I think are really key. And the feedback I had from clients over many years was really positive about, we see you going the extra mile.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
see that you really care about our business. And it's not just saying that, it's
Yes.
actually believing it
Believe
and doing it
and
with
doing it. Yeah.
integrity.
Well, what strikes me, James, in listening to you like this is, you know, consultancy is basically the essence of their relationship with the client is one of trust, isn't it?
Hmm,
So what they're saying to the client got to believe it's in the client's interest, not simply in the consultancy's
hmm.
interest. In fact, primarily the client's interest, and obviously some payback for the consultancy as well. And so, you're trading, if you're let's say a software vendor,
Mm,
basically you're trading on that trust which has been built up over quite a long time often.
mm,
And you've got to tread very carefully because, as we all know, trust can take a long time to create and overnight be destroyed. So I get the caution aspect. And I think the trouble with what we're saying, which sounds like, you know, obvious again, is that many small organizations, I'm thinking of our clients here, ScaleUp Group's clients, they're very time um, starved and typically money starved. So they don't spend enough time required to nurture the way you've just described relationships. They're looking for kind of quick wins, eye-catching wins. If it doesn't happen, or they make a deal, make a sale, they may well move on quickly, and the inevitable issues don't get properly addressed, which is your point. So I think that the lack of understanding of trust and the willingness to spend very senior time on it are two big issues for SMEs selling to large organizations.
I would agree. So it's very easy to say, and if you've got a large opportunity and you work in an organization that perhaps has longer timescales, you have the luxury of of a bit more time.
Yeah,
I've also been running a business where we've been running out of cash.
indeed.
So, I totally understand the other end of the spectrum. I think the sort of piece that I would say I've learned and is you can actually ask very direct and difficult questions to your
Hmm.
customer.
Hmm.
And I think if you have, and you're not going to be able to do this in two quick half an hour calls, but if you've got your top five clients that you are prepared to bet the business on, I think you can often talk to those clients and show some vulnerability in a careful way and actually say, look, these are some of the things that we've got to deliver. And I think it's quite interesting the number of CEOs that will reveal that they've actually been prepaid for some work or the client has have made faster decisions because they recognize the urgency. But it's about making
Okay.
sure that both sides' uh, goals are aligned. And
Yes.
I think actually, simply being very transactional.
Yes.
And I've been on the receiving end of quite aggressive pushing executives wanting a decision because they've got to just close this out.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
does not build a relationship.
No.
That does not create a great foundation.
No.
Equally, you can't spend hours and hours having nice conversations and dancing around the subject. You need to ask for the deal.
Yeah.
But I think it's trying to use your EQ rather than your
Yes.
brute force to try and get to a decision.
Which essentially means you've got to have the right type of people who are trying to sell, inverted commas, who get this rather than those who aren't maybe of the right experience or EQ, as you say. Yeah, it's not an easy one. It's a, I mean, what everything's coming across, James, is that you've got to see it as a long-term project rather than just quick hits and then move on. Um, because it's, I guess, back to the trust point, isn't it?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I get it.
Another one I've done, which I think is an interesting approach, and is when I was hiring business development directors, I would ask them, who are your five top relationships?
Mhm.
And they would all come up with a really impressive list.
Mhm.
You'd listen and go, wow, they are really well connected. This person's going to absolutely sail it here. He's going to do it really well. The next question was, how did you make those original connections? And more often than not, in my experience in technology sales, those people were introduced to someone. It's quite rare, I found, to have someone that does something cold.
Yeah.
They're given a lead, they're introduced by someone, they're in a meeting, there's a project lead, and a number of people that hired over the years, when I asked them, how did you get that meeting? They said, is that a trick question? I said, no, I emailed them. Brilliant. It is extraordinary how little cold reach out is done, in my experience.
Mm.
And that's not cold reach out that is, do you want to buy my widget? That is cold reach out with something that you think might be interesting to that person.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and actually, the essence of building a relationship and having the first moment is to try and find a way to connect with someone who's important to your business. And it might be asking for advice. And I've found it is far easier than people imagine to actually ask for advice from someone. If you contact someone and said, I'd like to sell you something, they'll
Yeah.
probably go, no thanks, we're covered.
Yes.
If you say, I'm running this business, we're thinking about moving into a new area, I would really value your opinions about this. I
Yeah.
saw that you've done this. Seen that you led this program. I found that an incredibly effective way. And sometimes that advice at the end of it, an individual might go, actually, this has been a really interesting discussion. I know we haven't talked about it, but perhaps we could have a further discussion. Or you've had a really good discussion and you can share, confidentially some observations you've seen from the industry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people love hearing about anecdotal stories about the industry and what others are
Yes.
doing. You're not breaking confidences, but just you have more knowledge and expertise than you had before.
In fact, of course, yeah, we're neatly kind of moving on to the inevitable point and subject, which is AI. You know, what's your take on this right now, and the part trust plays in it, do you think?
Well, I think we might say, John, that that's a fantastic curveball. Um,
You know me,
and
James.
a nice simple question. So the, the trusted AI uh, highlights a huge dichotomy between perhaps the EU and the US. And I think finding a balance where you are that machines are learning and you're developing LLMs and doing that in an appropriate way and a trusted way is very challenging. So I think the need for guardrails is critical. That said, history will show that regulators are often a long way behind where technology and commerce is moving. And you really don't want to have a situation where you could argue that the European banks are in a far worse position because of regulation versus American banks, if we use a non-technology point.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the AI opportunity is fascinating and but there's a lot of people talking about bubbles and what can we learn from the dot-com crash, which obviously immediately ages you. But I think the adage that things don't happen as quickly as you might imagine, but they're often far more profound than you could imagine, I think can only be true for AI. The the reality is I would suggest that people do not know what's going to happen, and they can certainly hypothesize. But as it relates to companies, I think I would be thinking most large organizations are probably not where they want to be as it relates to AI strategy. And what they say and what is actually happening is highly likely to be two different things. And those organizations are unlikely to reveal their current position. And I
Yeah.
think if you get back to saying, what is it that your AI solution is going to do and what problem does it solve? I think that you're in a far better position than just having a very generic conversation. And I think the the one area that is coming up more often than any other that I'm coming across is adoption. And I think in organizations there is a huge fear about AI, and leaders in organizations are talking about AI, but are they actually using it? And how are they using it in their day job? And for me, I can talk about the tools that I use every day and the things that I can do today that I couldn't have done a year ago. So there's a powerful story, but I'm having to force myself to do things differently, and to experiment. And I wonder how much, senior execs are actually doing this versus talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think there's points well made, James. And the recent study done by Barclays Bank was showing that the amount of money being spent is essentially being spent by uh, organizations, not technology ones, that is, on learning and piloting and prototyping, and not large sums by and large. The range seemed to be 50K up to a couple of hundred typically. I mean, there are always exceptions. Um, and this seemed to be the current plan for a little while, as your point, until organizations get to understand what can be done and should not be done by AI. Uh, so my kind of point to my clients, the technology entrepreneurs, is now is a great opportunity to be a pathfinder for your clients, show them what can be done to solve current problems which can't be delayed getting solved. Um, so you're quite right. Just leading with, you know, whatever the problem is, AI is the answer. It is not helpful to anybody.
Hmm.
But if you say you've got a problem with customer service or contact centers or what have you, and this is how AI can help it, like now, in a way which can be relied upon, I think then you've got a meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's cutting through. At the moment, the ridiculous sums of money being spent seem to be being spent by one technology organization with another one, as far as I can work out, but not massive amounts being spent by people who are actually at the receiving end of it and trying to solve, their business issues today. I'm sure it'll change within a matter of a year or two. So I
Yeah.
think tempus fugit and all that. Talking of which, James, it looks like we're all pretty much out of time here. Uh, I knew we weren't going to have difficulty in filling the time, given your wealth of knowledge and experience. Maybe we should have part two in due course. But just final thoughts, closing remarks, James?
So I think I've tried to focus very much on the human side. So it's thinking about your goals and objectives and how you're trying to drive that, and then how do you bring other people with you, and what's important to those other people. And yeah, I've found that that approach has worked really well for me,
Yeah.
and it's helped me build, strong foundational relationships with a whole range of people. So that's kind of where I come at kind of what has helped me do what I've done.
I must say, James, you prompted me to think right from when I first got to know you. Always felt you were a very active listener. Some people listen and nod without taking anything in at all. Whereas I've always felt that you listened and understood exactly what was being said and tried to be helpful in whatever outcomes were being discussed. And that natural consultative style clearly has stood you in great stead, James Bennett, successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, leader, and colleague in ScaleUp Group. And thanks, James, so much for sharing some of the pearls of wisdom you've acquired in your illustrious career. Remember, you scaling up entrepreneurs out there, we at ScaleUp Group exist to obtain growth investment for you on the best possible terms from the right sources, plus co-investing alongside them as tangible evidence of our belief and commitment in you. James Bennett epitomizes that entrepreneurial empathy and achievement. Thanks once again, James Bennett.
Thanks, John.